A visit to Skarpo. Peyton's eyes remained closed. His face looked like carved ice. Not a muscle twitched. Charlie put his ear to his uncle's chest and caught the faint sound of a heartbeat. "He's alive, but in a very deep sleep," said Charlie. "We'll just have to wait until he wakes up." It was no ordinary sleep, and yet it didn't seem like hypnotism. Peyton must have been to Ubeam Castle. But what terrible thing had happened to him there? Uncle Peyton was the only person in the house who could stand up to Grandma Bone, and Charlie shuddered to think what life would be like if his uncle never woke up. "Let's get out of here," he said. Billy was standing very still beside the door, and Charlie noticed that Rembrandt's head was poking out of the bottom of Billy's sweater. The rat's nose was twitching violently. Suddenly he gave a loud squeak and leapt to the floor. "Get him!" Charlie cried out. Billy ran out, and Charlie followed, closing Peyton's door behind him. He could see Rembrandt hurrying along close to the wall. Billy had almost reached him when a door opened between him and the rat. Grandma Bone came out of her room and stood facing Billy. "Oh." She raised a long black eyebrow. "Has Charlie brought a little friend home?" Billy blinked up at her. Charlie said, "It's Billy Raven, Grandma. He's staying the weekend." "I'm not blind. I can see it's Billy Raven," said his grandmother. "I'm glad you've come to your senses, Charlie. Billy's a nice boy." A great improvement on that smelly Benjamin, not to mention fiddling Fidelio and that drip Gabriel. Charlie hated her talking about his friends like that, but he was too worried about the rat to argue. For some reason, Rembrandt had stopped right behind his grandmother and was now sitting up and watching them. Billy didn't know what to do. He stared at Rembrandt with his mouth hanging open. "Why are you looking at my shoes, little boy?" said Grandma Bone. "Look me in the eye. I don't bite." "Not half," thought Charlie. As Billy tore his gaze away from the rat, Charlie was relieved to see it scampered downstairs. "Grandma," Charlie began. "What was that?" But Grandma Bone leaned over the banisters, but the rat had disappeared. "Well, now, Billy," she said, "the person who usually does the cooking in the house has gone on holiday." "Hardly," said Charlie. "Grandma, do you—" "Be quiet," she snapped. "As I said, we haven't got a cook, but I'll do my best to find some nice tidbits for you." Charlie should be on bread and water since he stole my goose liver pate. Charlie pointed at his uncle's door and shouted, "Grandma, do you realize Uncle Peyton's lying in there, half dead?" "I'm perfectly aware of my brother's state," she said coldly. "He deserved everything he got. Meddling, that's what he was doing. Well, he bit off more than he could chew this time, didn't he? Met his match." She gave a nasty snigger and swept downstairs. "I'm going to get some prunes," she called, and putting on her hat and coat, she left the house. "I don't like prunes," said Billy with a nervous frown. "You won't have to eat them," said Charlie. "Come on, let's find something better." Billy thought they should look for Rembrandt first, but although they searched every room on the ground floor, the black rat couldn't be found. "He's probably curled up asleep somewhere," said Charlie. "I'm going to put some chips in the oven." Before he could do this, his mother walked in with an armful of carrots. She showed no surprise on seeing a small white-haired boy sitting at the kitchen table. She was used to Benjamin's visits and was glad that Charlie would have a friend around at the weekend. She had guessed that Payne had come home because she'd heard strange noises very late the previous night, but she hadn't had time to pop in and see him before she left for work. "He's ill, Mom," said Charlie. "Really, really ill. His hair's gone gray and he can't speak." "Oh, dear. Perhaps I'll go and see." Mrs. Bone ran upstairs. A few minutes later, she came down looking very worried. I'll ring the doctor. Does your grandmother know about Peyton? She said he deserved it for meddling, Charlie told her. Mrs. Bone shook her head. That family, she muttered. While Charlie got the supper ready, Amy Bone rang the doctor. She was on the phone for quite some time trying to describe Payne's symptoms. It wasn't easy explaining that someone had gone gray overnight. I don't think the doctor believed me, said Amy, replacing the receiver, but he's coming around in an hour to check. At the moment, Grandma Bone came back with her prunes. As soon as she heard that a doctor had been called, she went to the phone and canceled his visit. How could you do that, said Amy. Peyton needs a doctor. No, he doesn't, Grandma Bone retorted. There's nothing a doctor can do. It's a waste of his precious time. Honestly, your own brother, cried Amy. Suppose he dies. How would you feel? We all die in time, said Grandma Bone, rinsing her prunes. Watching the arguments in wide-eyed silence, Billy decided that the family life wasn't all that it was cracked up to be. Supper was an uncomfortable affair. Refusing ham and chips, Grandma Bone worked her way through a bowl of prunes, making a horrible sucking noise in the process. After supper, while Mrs. Bone made a bed for Billy, the boys told her about Rembrandt. Oh, Charlie, not another animal, sighed Mrs. Bone. He's very clean, said Billy. Not a biter. But a rat? Just look out for him, please, Mum, begged Charlie. We don't want Grandma to find him first. I should think not, said his mother with a grin. I'll do my best, but don't blame me if I scream when I see him. She left the bedroom, saying, Rats. Whatever next? Billy wanted to continue the search for Rembrandt, but Charlie was afraid Grandma Bone would become suspicious. Besides, Uncle Peyton, who could always be relied upon in a crisis, was now lying in some terrible stupor, unable to tell anyone what had happened to him. Perhaps he would never be quite himself again. Your uncle breaks light bulbs, doesn't he? Said Billy. He's a power booster, said Charlie. Something happens when he looks at light. It just kind of explodes. That's why he doesn't go out until after midnight. Someone might see one of his accidents. There was a light on in his room, said Billy. What? Charlie hadn't noticed. He had to find out if it was true. When he looked on in his uncle's room, there it was. A bright light hanging from the ceiling right above his uncle's desk. It's gone, Charlie, came a faint voice from the bed. Peyton's dark eyes were now open. He was gazing at the light with an expression of horror. Uncle, you're awake, cried Charlie. If you can call it that, croaked Peyton. He's done for me, Charlie. I'm cleaned out, whipped. He's stronger than anyone could imagine. Who? Said Charlie. Peyton closed his eyes again. Your grandmother put the light on to test me. She wanted to make sure I'd lost the power. Well, I have. But who did this to you? Charlie asked. Payne's gray head tossed from side to side. I thought he was dead. Gone. But he never will be. Who? Begged Charlie. I can't say his name. Perhaps tomorrow. Peyton turned his face to the wall. Charlie realized that he couldn't press his uncle any further. He was about to leave the room when the wand caught his eye and the beginning of an idea crept into his mind. He picked up the ruined wand and slipped it back and slipped back into his room. Billy was sitting on Charlie's bed, looking very despondent. "Don't worry about Rembrandt," said Charlie. "He's a clever rat, and you're his friend. He'll turn up soon, I bet." He saw that Billy really wasn't listening to him. He was gazing at Charlie's hands with an expression of awe. When Charlie looked down, he saw the burnt wand was changing. He could feel it moving gently under his fingers, as slippery as silk and warm as sunlight. The silver tip began to sparkle, and the blackened wood gradually faded until it was a pure white. "How did that happen?" breathed Billy. Charlie shook his head. "Dunno." He sat beside Billy and ran his fingers over the smooth white wood. "It's a wand, isn't it?" said Billy. "It's all black and broken, and now it's like brand new. Is it your uncle's?" "No," said Charlie slowly. "I borrowed it from a person who had stolen it from another person." "Looks like it really wanted to be with you," observed Billy, "like it belonged to you." I can't... It can't," said Charlie. "It's impossible. I'm not a wizard or a sorcerer. But you're endowed, like me."